Hello, Garbles and Goobles. I am your graveyard wizard, and welcome on back to the Drawing Graveyard. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. You might think that we're drawing a flower, and it's not quite. Not quite a flower. It's flower adjacent, though. We're gonna do a little landscape. It's been a minute since I've drawn a landscape, and I've seen a few out in the wilds of my internet searches that have inspired me, and I did a little bit of drawing in one of my other sketchbooks, and so I figured I'd come on here and do something. But the topic in question may not be a surprise. We're gonna draw a little graveyard. Why not? A little graveyard landscape. When I'm doing things like this, I enjoy doing kind of a vignette. Typically, I'd kind of do a thumbnail a little bit smaller, but I like kind of drawing my parameters in. Otherwise, I get just a little too much. There's just like too much room, and my proportions can get kind of wonky. So that's why, as always, I'm kind of sketching things out and making sure that they're where I want them to be. Starting with kind of tree placement. While I'm doing all of this, I'm kind of figuring out where my foreground is, where my midground is, and then where my background is, and you can kind of see all that kind of come together. I think if I were going to do this again, I'd like to have a little more variation in the gravestone shapes, but I really like how these turned out. I think it feels traditional, like it feels kind of expected, and I like that feeling, where it's like, oh yeah, that's recognizable. I haven't done a lot of graveyard landscapes, so I think I needed that familiarity to make sure that it felt recognizable, you know? Not that I wanted it to be safe, but I wanted it to be easily read, you know? I have my windows open. It's a beautiful day out, so if you hear any crazy sounds, blame it on the birds outside or perhaps my neighbors. When I'm roughing things in, I think this is what I'd like to think about as my first draft. I'm not being too precious with it. I'm kind of letting things feel choppy, feel kind of sketchy. A lot of times I feel like in a sketch, there's kind of a freshness or a liveliness, and I'm trying to let that come through. So when I'm doing my final drawing also will hopefully have some of that kind of freshness. You can see even there, I'm using a scratching technique. Like it's almost jumpy and jagged, where I'm kind of letting my lines not be perfectly drawn out and kind of giving them that kind of edginess, kind of angular. I like that angular kind of feeling. That's what's fun about sketching, you know, it's so easy to want it to feel perfect, but I think the more you do it, the more you kind of get comfortable with the imperfection of it, and you actually kind of hope for it. That's what I'm doing here with some of these kind of like movements, where I'm just kind of coming through, laying things down and letting them be not exactly how I maybe see them in my head, but letting the looseness of my hand kind of collaborate with the mark that I'm trying to make. I wanted this to feel busy, not necessarily chaotic, but I wanted it to feel overgrown and not really kept, and I wanted it to feel really wild. So I kind of keep adding little plants and grass shrubs and all kinds of weird little guys. I started putting in some of these trees in the background as well. You can see too the way I'm holding my pencil, the way I'm holding my pencil helps keep things loose. I'm not able to grip the pencil real tight there. I kind of grip up on the pencil. When I'm sketching, I try to keep things a little looser, a little more uncontrolled, I would say. I'm kind of putting a little bit of foliage into the background horizon line just so that when I kind of fill the background in, the horizon line doesn't feel flat. I didn't want it to feel too flat. And today I'm bringing back the 01 micron. I've really been enjoying this. Even outside of my sketchbook, I've been doing a lot of drawing that's been with that 01 micron. It's a fun pen to use. It gives you, it's not too big, so sometimes the marks aren't too wet. And so if you're moving quick enough, it can kind of give you that scratchy feeling, which I've been really kind of vibing with. Even here, when I'm putting down these ink lines, you can kind of see that I'm not necessarily being precious with them. I'm kind of trying to move quick and keep some of that freshness. I want it to feel lively. I don't want it to feel too finished. Not quite that like kind of comic book, story book kind of feel maybe. I don't know exactly what to call it, but it's not necessarily realism, but it is. It's detailed, but it's not necessarily too, doesn't get caught up on the details maybe. I've been really enjoying that. This is all sped up to about 160%. So 100% is normal speed. So 60% then it would be that it's sped up. I didn't want it to be too crazy fast that it's like nausea inducing, but I wanted it to feel not quite so slow. Trying to get the best of both worlds, you know. I got a move coming up, so I feel like drawing has been a really nice, not distraction from moving, but you know, and I'm in that period where I'm not quite needing to pack things up yet, but I feel like I should be. And so I'm trying to kind of fight some of that anxiety away. So I've been drawing a lot, so hopefully there'll be a little bit of backstock of video. So if there's a bit of a dip in consistency, that's why. I wanted these pine trees to feel rowdy. I wanted them to feel kind of lively. come back and fill them in, but I wasn't too worried about the edges, but I wanted to make sure that the way the branches came out felt kind of moody, or I don't know. Just I'm trying to capture that foggy forest kind of feel without really knowing fully what I'm doing. So here I'm kind of putting some negative shading in where like grass that's just kind of hatch marks, rather than the grass that I originally put in that is positive. You know, it's kind of, there's volume there. This is just kind of more shading to kind of fill some of that space. And thus begins the shading. I wanted to put some of this foliage in where things are kind of overlapping or underlapping, you know, just so things feel like it feels like things are coming out from behind other things. You know, it's not, I don't want it to feel too random, but I don't want it to feel empty either. Or at least that's what I was thinking about. Like I said, I've done some landscapes, not a ton in this style, so I still feel a little bit new to figuring out the way things are laid out. I had a ton of fun doing this, but I definitely feel like I'm still figuring things out, you know? Again, I wanted to bring some contrast in, so we're kind of thinking about the light source, how shadows are falling, all that. Some of this I felt confident in, some of it I felt like I was kind of figuring out on the fly, but I mean, that's drawing. Sometimes you just gotta think about it, you know, maybe get it in the next one if it didn't feel right. I do kind of like these harsh shadows where it's like, you know, totally filled in. I think I want to start doing that just a little more, kind of committing to that contrast feels really nice. Here's a full shot of my hand, in case you need to know what that looked like. Again, like these, I'm kind of spacing things, trying to see if the shadow needs to go around the leaves or under the leaves. I kind of like the way I end up getting this, where it feels like there's a little bit of cast shadow. You know, this is kind of a cartoony vibe overall, but it's like a moody cartoon, so it's trying to be close but not exact, and I think that's always a really interesting place to be, where you're kind of trying to find that in between. I've been thinking about doing another peony drawing. I just drew one last night that I really enjoyed, so I think I might record another one. I draw flowers all the time, and I'm constantly pulled to them. I like doing stuff like this too, so there'll definitely be a mix of things coming, but it's always flowers on the horizon. When I'm putting this shading in, I'm trying to think about, I don't want it to look like words, and I want it to look like there's maybe something etched into these stones. You know, trying to keep a little bit of mystery. For a little bit I thought about maybe trying to make it look like there was an image in one of these or something, but I didn't want it to be too close, you know. I didn't want people being distracted by trying to read the little tombstones. So I think trying to keep it feeling like maybe a language that you just can't read is what I ended up kind of pushing for. And I love how this cross hatching looks. I think especially with this 01 micron, I feel like the hatching really kind of looks nice. Not so much cross hatching, more just hatching. When I first started drawing this, I think this is the first tree that I shaded in. I kind of kept switching the directions up. I think eventually I tried to keep the directions, kind of the general directions, the leaves or the branches and pine needles would kind of be facing, so it kind of gave it that directional. You kind of want to, or what I was thinking of is trying to imply that directionality without it feeling like I didn't want it to be too chaotic, but I didn't want to have to draw every single needle, you know, kind of trying to make it feel like your brain's filling in the work, you know. And here I'm kind of drawing that outward angle and then kind of bringing them in a little bit without it feeling too symmetrical, and also trying not to make it feel too expected or too chaotic. And I feel like at the top I kind of started figuring it out, that I really like how they kind of came together. See, it feels like there's layering, feels like there's a little bit of light kind of coming through and kind of being reflected onto it, but it still is casting a lot of shadow. I'm always trying to add as much texture into things. I think, you know, something like this is a background tree that isn't really going to get a whole lot of attention as far as, you know, a finished piece is concerned, but that's almost where I enjoy putting that detail in, where it's like it feels believable. Like the tree feels like, it doesn't feel like exactly what you see in nature, but it feels close enough that your brain doesn't really pick up on it. Kind of blends in, becomes like, I don't know, almost like a harmony in a song, where if a harmony is really good, it blends in and accentuates, where if, you know, you're not singing the right harmony, it's going to feel discordant. And I think, you know, you can do that intentionally and unintentionally, in either direction, but, you know, you're always thinking, or at least I'm always trying to think about how things kind of mesh together and what's going to be the focal point and what's not. At least I try to. I mean, even when I was putting this drawing together, I don't know if I was really thinking about that, but once I started doing the trees, I was like, ooh, I really like how these are looking, but I need them to be in the background. I don't necessarily want them to be the main character. And I think you can kind of do that with your contrast. You know, if you have like where your light feels like it's being directed the most is usually kind of where your main action is, and things that are in shadow are usually kind of second important, but maybe, you know, that's not always true. There, I realized I forgot to put a trunk on this tree. Wanted to add covering up this little ink splatter that I had from the last drawing. Sometimes it feels really satisfying when you can hide something like this where it's like, whoa, didn't even notice it. I'm also, I don't remember if I mentioned this in a previous video, but I'm using a bone folder to kind of hold the paper down. Sometimes when it's farther away, you can see how much the paper moves up and down, and you're not necessarily getting quite as like exact, especially in a sketchbook when the pages kind of get all willy-nilly. Sometimes your paper gets a little bit of kickback, gets like memory from being wet and stuff like that. So I'm just using the bone folder to kind of hold it down so I'm getting the most flat surface that I can, where like a loose sheet of paper doesn't necessarily do that as much. Something in a sketchbook will. Sometimes I use my finger, sometimes I use a tool like this. The bone folder is nice just because it's, it's not going to like ruin your paper. It's kind of got a flat edge to it, so I can really like put it where I need to, where I think other times I've used like my finger or a pen, and those also work just fine, but they're not spreading out that surface area just as much. I really like how the trunks of these trees ended up. I haven't used that technique exactly like that, and I dig them. So to me, this tree, this one that I'm doing just now, is kind of a little bit further back in the hierarchy of closeness is, background, foreground, middle ground, or foreground, background, foreground, middle ground, background. That's the order. That's the correct order. So that tree is further back. So I was doing it a little bit lighter, so it had that atmospheric perspective. And I feel like it came through. I also end up putting some graphite or pencil down to, graphite. I sometimes mix up graphite and lead. I know that pencils aren't lead anymore, or maybe never were, I think I heard. But so sometimes I mix up which is which. But yeah, I put pencil down just to give it a little bit of that kind of foggy feeling. And I feel like that mixture with these trees with that little bit of atmospheric perspective really kind of help add some of that moodiness. Here comes the graphite. This is a lead holder. I think they're called, or a graphite holder. So this holds, it's like a mechanical pencil, but it holds a big thick piece of graphite. I like a traditional mechanical pencil. There's just something about the graphite holder. I kind of like, you can wear down one edge and have like a really nice big smooth shading edge. I don't know. There's just something about it that I like. Once I discovered them, I think I learned about them when I was in college, and I was like, oh, this is me. I need to use one of these. They're a little bit clunky, but I really enjoy them. So I'm also, when I'm laying down this graphite, I'm kind of doing, you can see it kind of gradiating. I'm doing darker on the bottom and then letting it get lighter on top. Then I'm going to come through and smooth this out. I think I'm using a 4B lead, so I can really kind of push it to get it darker, and then push less hard and have it still be light, but kind of leaving a decent mark. I'm really glad. I usually, when I'm breaking things up, like I almost think of them as stained glass, where there are these different like pockets of shading, and from time to time when I've done things like this, they will be different Like I won't get the shading pressure just right, but these came out pretty similar. So I was pretty proud about that. Even looking at that graphite with that like pine, the black of the pine tree, I really like how that contrast came together. Oh, and then I came in. I forgot I added for some reason the foreground was feeling just not quite as kind of like busy and overgrown as I wanted it. So I just threw in a little bit more of this, like a little bit of grass, that negative space grass, just like kind of scratchy. Fill it in here and there, just where it was feeling a little bit light. So I'm going to use this shop towel just to kind of blend. It's nothing fancy. I wasn't trying to be. I didn't use like a blending stick. I just wanted something other than my finger to just kind of push the graphite around. And I felt like I wasn't too worried about getting it into the trees. I come back through with an eraser and kind of clean things up. And I feel like it worked out pretty well. It also kind of gives it a little bit of that atmospheric perspective. This I again was trying to not be too like careful with. I wasn't trying to get it exact. I just didn't want to. I was just trying to be careful about not getting the background too much. So if it came into the edges of the tree, I wasn't too worried about it. See there, I have a little bit, and I think I just try to blend it, and that came out pretty good. I clean up the edges just to kind of help give it that framed feeling. Ooh, look at that clean edge. Sharp. You cut yourself on that graphite edge. Ooh-wee. Trying to brush my eraser bits away without smudging the graphite. There we are. Look at all those little marks. I love making little marks like that. I hope this one wasn't too spooky for y'all, you know. If you made it this far, I appreciate you hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.